Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over my July wrap-up. So for the month of July, I was a co-host for the Battle of the Decades, which is Battle of the Bands Round 2, the Readathon that was hosted by Jake over from The Bookish Drummer. I was captain of Team Journey. We did come in last place, but like I told everyone, our team did an awesome job, and we did hold the Golden Throne seat for the first week, and then we kept the silver. We were in the silver second place spot for 2 weeks, and then everything just kind of went downhill. Nirvana came back and beat everyone at 900 points, which was so far ahead of all of us, all the other teams, but we all had such a great time. We had 16 prompts total to complete, and yes, I did it. I completed all 16 prompts. I read a total of 16 books for the month of July. That is the most I have ever read in a month, ever. Ever. Okay, so it was a lot. So what I'm going to do is this is going to be part 1 of my July Readathon wrap-up, and then I'm going to do a part 2. I'm going to do 8 books in this video, part 1, and then my second half of the remaining 8 books in part 2. So without further ado, let's hop, skippity jump right to the first 8 books that I completed for this readathon. Book number 1 that I completed was Ascension by Nicholas Binge. This book completed prompt number 1, which was a book you don't think anyone will buddy read with you. I gave this 4 stars. This is a sci-fi. This was a new release that I was looking forward to, that I was anticipating. So just a little snippet of the premise. A mind-bending speculative thriller in which the sudden appearance of a mountain in the middle of the Pacific Ocean leads a group of scientists to a series of jaw-dropping revelations that challenge the notion of what it means to be human. In this, we are following our main character, Harold. He is a scientist, and he is selected to go onto a group expedition to explore this mountain that just appears in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We are following his account through the lens of his unsent letters to his family. Also, one of the things in this that I liked, because it's like science heavy, science expedition, science heavy, is that the characters are really fleshed out. So Harold, when we're going through basically his diary, it's just like these unsent letters was basically his diary of everything that had taken place during this time. You're having also flashbacks of his life before this expedition. Like he's talking about events that had happened prior and some of the tragedies that he had went through. What I liked about this was you can see his battle with faith through conversations that he has with other people. And it's not just faith versus science. It is faith as a whole, like his relationship with God, how he had faith and then it went downhill when X, Y, and Z had happened. And then he's having conversations on this mountain with one particular individual who was challenging him on it, and you can see the before and after and the struggle. It's like challenging his belief in science, like he can't explain certain things, and just that whole conversation. I thought that was really well done, and I liked that part of the story. The reason I did not give this 4.5 or 5 stars is because I can't really say why, because it's going to spoil this. But when it comes to sci-fi, there's different kinds of sci-fi, right? We have space operas, aliens, techie, technological stuff, dystopian, sci-fi, like mixed genre. You have alternate universe, parallel universes, time travel. Like there's different types of sci-fi. All I can say without spoiling is that this type of sci-fi was not my kind of sci-fi, and I will leave it at that. But still, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the conversations the characters were having. I enjoyed being like the struggle that he had on the inside, how he thought about things. I enjoyed like the beginning part of this book. There was a mystery aspect to it. This is like a suspense thriller. Now, I didn't see it as a thriller. It was more suspense for me personally. But all in all, I enjoyed this. I give it 4 stars. Okay, next up was prompt number 2, a relentless character that would stop at nothing. For this prompt, I chose The Young Elites by Marie Lu. Now, this was a YA fantasy that had X-Men type vibes, which the premise sounded fantastic, okay? Sounded fantastic with X-Men vibes. I really love that. And like kind of like a YA version of like Vicious as well, like a little mashup of X-Men and like the Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I gave this 2 stars. Like I said, I loved how this started. It had such promise, and the beginning part felt like a movie. I was like, this is starting off with a kick. Is starting off really good. I could see this being a movie. This is like really good. And then the writing changed, and the second half, it just went downhill. I didn't care about what was happening anymore. I wasn't attached to any of the characters. I was just bored. And that was a disappointment because it started off so strong for me, and then I just became so bored. Like it did not go anywhere. Book number 3 was for the prompt Dreams, a place that you dream of going to or where you want to visit. For this prompt, I chose The Grandest Bookshop in the World by Amelia Mellar. This was just a light, fun, middle grade read. I gave this 4 stars. It is set in 1893 in Melbourne, Australia. We are following the Cole kids. They take on a magical trickster to save their bookshop arcade owned by their father. And it's just the adventure of these kids. There's so many like puzzles and riddles and high stakes. The reason I didn't give it higher than 4 stars, like a 4.5 to 5, is because this, I had a hard time seeing the puzzles being solved. Like every time they'd solve the puzzles, it was happening so quickly, and I felt like I needed a visual. I needed to see it on paper, like all of these things. Like it was just hard for me, and I'm a visual person, but it was going so fast. Like it's like kind of when you're reading like these big epic fantasies, and there's all these names, and you need to see a map of the world. It's easier to see like the visual map of the world and like see who the rulers are, all the names, and how everyone's associated. And with this, I kind of felt that I just needed to visually see something on paper. But other than that, I thought this was just like a cute, fun, light read. It'll make you smile in a lot of parts. And what I found fascinating as well was that this was actually based on Real Cole's book arcade. That was a real thing. And at the end of this book, there's like, I had the audiobook I was listening to, and it was like 15 minutes long of like the historical information of the guy, I forgot his first name, something Cole. How he, his history, his past, and how he came to have created this arcade and everything the arcade had, and the book, like what was included in the book and what was really in the arcade itself. It was very fascinating, and that was just a nice little fun fact that really added to the story. All right, book number 4, the prompt for this one was The Scavenger Hunt. Now for the Scavenger Hunt, I will include the graphic for it here. You follow these steps and then you get to the book that fulfills this prompt. For me, it was Blood of Elves, which is book number 1 in the Witcher series by, cannot pronounce this guy's first name, but his last name is Sapkowski. I gave this 4.5 stars. I actually really enjoyed this. Now, I was told that it's better to read the short stories before jumping into book 1 because It gives you the history. You have a better understanding of all the events and the characters that are in book one, and that you could be confused if you don't read the short stories first. So I tried the short stories. I did not make it far, and I didn't like it. I didn't like how it started. First off, I thought it was very bold how the first book of the short stories collection started. Very bold. I did not like it, and I wasn't liking the storyline. Like, I didn't get far at all, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna skip the short stories. I'm gonna skip it. And I was reading reviews, and I didn't like the reviews I was reading of like the content warnings in the short stories. So I was like, you know, I'm just gonna jump into book one and see what happens. Well, that's what I did. I was pleasantly surprised. Reason number one is that, well, first off, I came into reading The Witcher without ever playing the video games and not seeing the TV show. So I was going in blind. I did not know what I was getting into. The story, the premise of the book sounded so good, and I just wanted to see what it was about. Now, I am going to say that this is completely different than the TV show. Which is basically what is done with a lot of things for a long time, is the over-sexualization of women. And I don't want to watch that. So that's why I never jumped into the show. But I am going to say that this book is completely different from the show. There's no like graphic, explicit scenes. There's no over-sexualization of women. There's like little mentions of things that are happening. It doesn't stay there. There's no spiciness in it at all either, which I like. I don't like that in my stories, so I stay away from that. But this, so it was pleasantly, I was surprised. It's completely different from the TV show, just in case you were wondering. It's different. And I was not confused. I was able to follow this storyline without having to go into the short stories. So just in case you wanted to pick this up, but you were questioning that, like if you didn't want to like have to go through book one and book two of the short story collection. For me, it wasn't necessary for me to read the short stories. I enjoyed book one without any prior understanding of anything else, and I understood everything that was going on. I could follow it. I thought it was great. So in The Witcher Blood of Elves book one, we are following our main character Geralt. Well, there's actually two main characters, Geralt and Ciri. Geralt is a famous witcher who is the caretaker of Ciri. Ciri is like the gifted child that has magical abilities that she can't quite understand yet, but she is being trained to be a witcher just like Geralt. He's training her, but there's like a, I'm not gonna say an academy, but there's like this place that Geralt and other witchers are, and they're instructors and they're instructing her. So it's Geralt and a few others that are kind of in charge of Ciri. So the first part of the book focuses on her training there with him and the rest of the men instructors that are witchers, and then the second part of the book is she is being trained elsewhere and in other things as well. There's not too much action in this one. It's not like super action heavy. It's actually more conversation heavy. And there are multiple points of views, and there is like jumping from character to character. And that, it was the confusing part for me. I was just like, okay, who are we talking about again? Like, that is always a struggle for me with all these multiple POVs and different character like jumps that, you know, sometimes it's really hard for me to keep track of. But other than that, I thought this, I mean, it was meant to be like a setup for like a foundation. I thought it was a solid foundation for the next books in the series. So 4.5 stars for this one. Okay, prompt number 5 was read a book with a spoiled or greedy character. Now for this prompt, I read Revel by Lisa Mia Smith. I gave this 3 stars. This was only a 3-star read. It is a YA fantasy that is, it was a new release and it was a debut novel, and because it's a debut, you know, you gotta give it some grace. Moulin Rouge inspired, and was supposed to have like Caraval vibes as well, set in like the Prohibition era. We are following our main character, Lux. She is the star of her family's fantastical show set in the Prohibition era. The villain is the son of the wealthiest family that controls something they need, and there's a deal. There's blackmail that's involved as well. We have like a second main character, Jameson, so we're going from 2 points of views, Lux to Jameson, and he's kind of like the love interest that is, you know, the poor orphan kid. And the reason this didn't work out for me is because I was just creating a story in my head that was not this. I thought it could have been done so differently, and it just, what I wanted it to be was not what I got. And I think this is just another case of the premise sounds better than how it was actually executed. So this was only a 3-star for me. Prompt number 6 was read a book that made someone else cry. Now for this one, I chose Of Honey and Wildfires by Sarah Korn. You have heard me talk about this in multiple other videos, and it's time to talk about it. This was a 4-star read for me. I really enjoyed this story so much. It is a Western fantasy, and I'm gonna say right now, this is the first Western fantasy I've ever experienced, and it's something I realized I need in my life. I couldn't believe how much I really enjoyed a fantasy in a Western setting. It was so well done, and I need more of it. I just need more of it now. On this one, we are in multiple POVs, and there are time jumps from like the current day to different times in the past. The pacing was even. It matched the storyline. It was perfect. The writing, Sarah writes in such an emotional, beautiful way. That's the best way. I mean, it's like, it's not flowery prose. It's not flowery at all, but it's beautiful prose. It's emotional. It gets you to feel everything that is happening. It's like exactly how an artist can make you feel and capture the emotions of a painting. Like to look at a painting, to look at a picture and just feel exactly what you're seeing. She's able to do that with words. In you know, these tragic, real, just emotional situations, she can like, she's like the wielder of poetry. Like it's like reading poetry to really make you feel what's happening, and I love that. Now, the only reason I did not give this a 5-star, because I thought this was a 5-star prediction. I really wanted it to be a full 5 stars. The only thing that I did not like about this, okay, now this is going to be spoilers, so I'm gonna put down in the comments down below where the timestamp of where the spoilers start and where the spoilers end. So spoilers are starting now. There is our character, one of our main characters, Arlen. Arlen, we find out in the story, is really a girl, and her name is Alice. There's a point in the story where, and she says it, when she's called out and realized by her father that she is like her real father, when we find out who her real father is, in that scene, he realizes that Arlen is not a he, but is a she. And it's realized to us, okay, as the reader. That's when we know the truth. And all that she says is she is more of a man where it really matters. Something along those lines, okay? But why? Why? Like elaborate, go on, elaborate on, but how, the how and the why, and, you know, because throughout this whole story, Arlen is being referred to as a he and a man and a boy when we're going back to childhood. Like, nowhere in the story is any of what just happened mentioned again. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, is there a backstory of when she was taken by Matthew and was told that he was her father, did he raise her to be a boy? Like told her things to make her believe that she needed to be a boy for this job? Was she made to believe that being a female was dangerous and she felt safer being a boy, like dressing as a boy and having to pretend to be a boy for safety reasons? Because I mean, that would make sense in the world that they're in, and it would make sense in the position that she grows up to, quote unquote, inherit everything that he has. You know, if he would have told her that, you know, you need to be a man for this job and it's dangerous being a woman, you can't be seen for X, Y, and Z reasons, that would make sense. Let's explore that. None of that was explored. It was literally just mentioned in a brief snippet that Arlen was really Alice and she felt like a man. She wanted to be a man, and in her, like, inside she is more of a man. She is a man in all the ways that matter. That's it. There's no in-depth explanation to any of that throughout the rest of the story, and especially being referred to as a he and a man, when in reality Arlen is not a man. Arlen is Alice, and Alice is a woman. How did Alice grow up being called Arlen and wanting to be a boy? Like, you still have all the female parts. You still have a period. What was it like to be growing up under this man who knows that you're a female, but now you want to be a male? Like, how did he treat her in that regard? And especially, yeah, and around being like all the physical, womanly things, none of that was touched on. So that was the only thing that I had a problem with the story. Everything else I absolutely loved, but this was the only thing, and that just really took it down for me, down just a star. But other than that, everything else was 4 stars. Prompt number 7 was read a book that is a genre you are willing to try or read more of. For this one, I chose The Project by Courtney Summers. I chose The Project because Trinity over from Portable Magic, she mentioned this in one of her vlogs, her YA vlog, and I was like, that intrigues me. I'm gonna put that for this prompt. I don't read contemporary, and I don't read contemporary at all. The only time I will try out a contemporary is if it is a mystery, thriller, or suspense type storyline. The Project is suspense. It is a suspense cult-based story. Basically, we're following our main character, Lo. We are in her point of view, and we're actually switching. We're going from Lo's point of view to her sister's point of view. Her sister is B. Parents die in a car crash. Lo is in the crash as well. Now, their parents die, but Lo survives. And B is Lo's older sister. Think of the grief. There's a lot of grief. There is a lot of emotion happening around this event because Lo was born with, I think she was born with an illness. Like, she was ill for a lot of her life. She got better, and then this car crash happens. They lose their parents, and then her health takes a downward spiral, plus the emotional and mental toll on top of it. She is then sent to live with another family member after she gets out of the hospital to recover, and B is, she leaves and joins what is called the Unity Project. The Unity Project is a biblical cult. Now, what a biblical cult means is that when someone takes the Bible, takes the word, and adds to it and twists it to make it what they want, or to justify their actions, to give justification to everything that they do, and they are manipulators. So they will manipulate and twist to get everything they do believable. After B joins this biblical cult, the Unity Project, for years, Lo tries to contact her. Lo becomes a journalist, and over years and years of trying to contact B and never hearing from her, never being reached out to, like, she actually tries to use her position and job as a journalist to take the project down, and the leader, the guy who is leading this thing, things just ensue from there. And then how she gets involved with it herself to try and find her. It's a really good, engaging story. Well, to me, this was predictable. Everything that happens in a cult that you can think of happens in this story. So all of that was very much predictable. I gave this 3.5 stars. I don't think I said that, but this was 3.5 stars. Because it engaged me, it was a really interesting, it was suspenseful. I liked the suspense. There were just things in this that were not explained or clarified enough. There are things that are happening off the page that should have been on the page. You know what I mean? And I understand what the author was trying to do with some of it, that despite what this man, his lies and his manipulation and how he has a God complex and is actually referring to himself as God and inserting himself into the role of Jesus in scripture. I liked what the author was trying to do in that regard, of trying to get you to see, with certain events that happened, she was trying to get you to see that despite what this man was doing, that miracles do happen and God is real, and despite the lies of this man. But the only thing I didn't like was the execution of it. Those certain things should have been done more on the page, and it wasn't. But all in all, it was very engaging. I liked the writing. I liked how she did the storyline. The pacing was good. There was never a time where it was slow. Like, the pacing was even. Manipulation tactics, it was all really well written, until a couple things at the end I don't think were written well, and I don't think would have really happened realistically. Yeah, all in all, 3.5. I still liked it. All right, last book for part 1 of this wrap up is prompt number 8. Read a series you believed to be completed, or that the author will complete. I switched up a lot of the books that I originally had on my TBR. So the one I originally had on my TBR, I just tossed, or I DNF'd. I DNF'd it, and I'll get to the DNFs at the end of part 2. So because I DNF'd the one that I originally had for this prompt, I just did a reread. I did a reread of Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. This is a new adult fantasy trilogy, because I found out earlier, or a couple months back, that V.E. Schwab is writing book number 3. Book number 3 will be in the works. This is called the Villains series. We are following our 2 main characters in this, Victor and Eli. They are old college roommates, and they're both sociopaths, and they basically start experimenting with death. When someone has not even a near-death experience, you have to die and come back. In this world, they're called extraordinaries, and whoever has died and comes back with an ability. Ability is like based on what happened surrounding their death. Victor and Eli start doing these experiments. They become extraordinaries, and they become rivals, and it is such a good storyline. I just really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited for book 3. With Vengeful, if you haven't heard me talk about it before, with Vengeful, I just didn't like the way that it ends. And before I knew that book 3 was being written, it was just the duology, and I was like, how could it end this way? Like, there are things that are not touched on. Like, there's too many things that aren't wrapped up the way they should be. And this one, I enjoyed the reread. This one is completely different than Vicious. It has a different whole feel to it. Vengeful is more mafia, Godfather, Goodfellas type vibe, feel, storyline, and we get new characters in this as well. So I do recommend the series if that is something that you're going for. All right, that concludes part 1 for my July wrap up for Battle of the Decades readathon. Let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of these books, if you took part in the readathon, what your favorite prompt out of these 8 were, or what your favorite book was that you read for one of these prompts. I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but yeah, if you go back, and I will link it down in the description box below, if you go back and watch my July TBR video, you will see that quite a few books have changed. I did not stick with my original TBR, basically because I'm a mood reader, and some of the books that I chose I just was not in the mood for, and I just had to scrap them. I had to scrap them. And then some I saw from other people talking about it, like Trinity, when Trin was talking about the project, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, doing that instead. Just because if a premise intrigued me and I'm in the mood for that, I just want to jump right into it. Like I said, that is it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be the remaining 8 that I finished to wrap up the readathon. If you like this video, give me that thumbs up and smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming bookish content. And as always, happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.